contrary to what people think about writing and writing stories specifically, and within that even writing drama, it's not a burst of sudden inspiration. There's something very mathematical, methodological in how to construct and engineer a well-told story.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. This episode is all about telling stories and really important ones. Meet Boaz Gaon, the CEO and founder of Wisdo, an award-winning platform going beyond the social graph by connecting people to others who've been there, are helpful, and are available to chat within 10 seconds and less. Wisdo reduces feelings of isolation by 70% within the first 2 weeks of using the app. Boaz founded Wisdo after losing his father to cancer and witnessing up close how unnecessarily impossible it is in times of need to find someone who ticks all three boxes. Someone who's helpful, relevant, and instantly available. Previous to Wisdo, Boaz was a journalist and social activist.
Boaz Gaon, thank you for joining me. How are you today?
Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I can't wait to talk about what you're doing to tackle the loneliness epidemic that is not only triggered by COVID, but has been with us for so long and is only growing. Obviously, the world is changing, and I can't wait to pick your brain on how the changing world is either adapting or misadapting to our loneliness epidemic. But also talk about you as a playwright. And you did your Bachelor's of Arts in Theater and Playwriting from Tel Aviv University, then on to doing your Master's in Global Communications in London. And I just need to know how everything pieces together. So Boaz, before we really get into what you do with Wisdo, talk to me about yourself. How do you get started? How do you go from playwriting to tech?
Well, it's not that big a jump. I think that's what a writer would tell you, or someone who's a kind of spends his life engineering stories. Because contrary to what people think about writing and writing stories specifically, and within that even writing drama, it's not a burst of sudden inspiration. There's something very mathematical, methodological in how to construct and engineer a well-told story. I think that what we do when we start a company or we have some sort of vision is, we have something in mind that we want to try and build that would attract people and will build an audience over time and keep people engaged. I think that one of the skills that, people need to acquire as they start this journey towards building a company is something that not is often talked about or looked at, which is the ability to construct and tell a well constructed story.
Right.
Because you're going to have to tell the story when you raise money, when you hire people, when you launch a feature, when you start making money, when you start having conversations with your audience. And the last thing that I would say about this is another, I think, misunderstood aspect of storytelling is that it's not only a means of communicating, it's also a really effective tool in identifying the core of anything at all. So, for example, when you're going to sit in a room and 1,000 people are going to have different ideas about what the company should be or what the product should be, then you're going to have to go back and say, okay, what is our story? Who are
Right.
we? Who are we not? What's the villain that we're trying to beat? In our case, it's loneliness and isolation. And how do we do that? What are the actions that we're going to take? So all that comes together. And maybe this is just through my own filter, who's someone who was a storyteller and is, but I think it's a very the overlap there is real.
So talk to me a little bit about the process of writing a play. I before we get to Wisdo, because it's very rare that I get to talk to somebody who's actually writing plays and puts puts them on later and sees them come to life. So walk me through that. At the startup journey of writing a play and until you see it actually on the stage. What is the process like? What do you have to do as sort of like the CEO and the mastermind behind this whole thing?
Mastermind, that is something that I don't know if I can live up to, but writing a story or writing a play, again, much like doing anything creative, and I think starting a company is certainly one of them. It starts with a very personal pain point. So you go through life, suddenly you're faced with something that is very troubling or makes you very mad, or is very painful or very emotional, and you try to really translate that into a bigger creation that can open up the conversation with more people instead of just containing it within yourself. That is really the whole idea of a creative process. As for writing a play, once you've identified that you want to commit to that, and I think that's the real first question. I mean, is this an idea that you want to spend a year or 2 years or 3 years of your life on, or is this just a whim? And once you have
Right.
identified that this is a world that you want to dive into, then
Right.
the first question is going to be, who's the hero? Who's their protagonist? Who's that? Once upon a time there was a who,
Right.
and then you start with coming up with a situation, dramatic situation where that specific protagonist wants something, and can't get that. Um, and you're trying to think about what's the most interesting kind of first scene that you can start with that would
Right.
bring the protagonist very close to understanding that this is not something that is going to happen. He's going to go and he's going to have to go and fight for this thing to happen.
How
And
do you
once
get feedback on this whole process? So obviously I'm seeing I'm picturing you, I'm picturing you like in this picturesque resort, like looking at the ocean and writing, a bunch of pages. Of course, that's not necessarily the case, but then you like in a startup, you get a product, and now you have to like, can you do an MVP with the play? Is that even a thing? Can you do something like that and get feedback?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's more of a it's midnight and you're in your underwear, and you're trying to get through the night, because you're obsessed with this idea that you just had. And as for MVP, um, not really. It needs to get to a point where at least you can have, and that's by the way one of the good things that happened with one of the very few things that is good in the Corona age. I think this whole idea of virtual conversations online has become something that is now part of all of our lives. So, for example, one thing that has been happening in the drama and actors scene here in Israel is that a lot of actors are open to reading early work on
Right.
Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, and you can get a sense of whether this is working or not. But there's going to be a phase, like when you're starting working to work on a feature, or company, or anything that would eventually have to launch, where it's basically you, a small group of people that you trust, and instinct, whether this is going in the right direction,
Right.
and experience. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at identifying whether this is going somewhere or not. And then at some point, yeah, you're going to have to give this to a bunch of actors to read, much like launching a feature for 1,000 people in a closed beta, and see what happens. And then
Wow.
sometimes you go, well, that was an interesting experience, and on to the next idea. Sometimes you go, that was unbelievable. Sometimes you go, well, that part was really strong. This part needs to be cut completely from the play, and then it's just iterating towards an improved version.
Wow, I think that that's just wonderful, and I'm guessing that at the end, the sort of the product launch is getting to the stage, getting that feedback. That's sort of like the product hunt, where you're seeing like the people's sales go up and the churn rate, and then whether you get then you release some more products. And I think that's just so fascinating. And I'm a big musical guy. My brother's on Broadway,
Mm.
So I've been fascinated by this whole thing, and I think it's especially fascinating that on one hand you're running Wisdo with a remarkable mission and a remarkable story, and now I can see why the story is so clear and so very engaging with whoever listens to it. So now tell me a little bit about, before you even tell me about Wisdo, tell me about the loneliness epidemic that has swept through the world, since especially the mid 20th century, and going on today.
Yeah, well, it's just like you said. There's an epidemic that predates the COVID pandemic, which is people feeling more lonely and isolated than ever before. And what we've noticed, and obviously it all starts with a personal experience, but eventually when we did look at the data, trying to understand, what's going on, we did see two contradictory trends. One is more people connected to more people than ever before in the history of humankind via, social networks and the online, products that are available via online. But at the same time, more people define themselves as lonely and isolated than ever before. And these two things don't seem to kind of match up. How is it possible that more people feel more disconnected in this age
Right.
where
Well,
all
the age of connectivity.
exactly, or ultra connectivity and
Right.
connectivity. And when you dive deeper into that, you find that the reason is that the people that we're introduced to online are not necessarily the people who can make us feel more connected and less isolated and better about who we are, where we are, and where we can get to. And when you double click on that, and we did, you find that the reason for that is because when you're introduced to other people online, primarily via social networks, the organizing criteria is one, people who are popular. So people are ranked by how many helpful likes they have, friends they have, followers they have, and that creates a certain competition between
Right.
you and those guys because all of you are part of this high school schoolyard,
Right.
fighting over who's going to be more popular. Even though you might be in your 70s and 60s or 50s, and you should have been way, way over that phase of your
Huh.
life. And the second part is you're going to be introduced to people who you're already connected to somehow. So these are friends of friends of friends of friends. And
Right.
again, that's going to create a tension between you and those guys where it's going to be, do I want to say that? What are they going to say? I might meet them later on. What's that going to do to who I am and all that? While when you're faced with a moment in life that requires, meeting people who can help you feel more connected and more supported, we found out that a different set of criteria that would put in place can change that whole behavior. And those three criteria is one, people who've been in your shoes, even if you don't know them, even if it's people that you would never ever meet on Facebook or Instagram or any of these guys, because they're not in your social graph, there's no overlap,
Right.
um, but they've been in your shoes and know exactly what you're talking about. The second is people who ranked by helpfulness rather than popularity. So
And
they've
how do you do that? How do
so
you form
that
those metrics?
that's a longer product discussion, but basically you try to work into the product experience data points that you can leverage so you can promote people who are more helpful. I'll give you one very simple example. We don't have a like button. We have a helpful reaction.
Huh.
So the more helpful reactions you earn from other people on the platform, the higher your helpfulness
Right.
score. And then we also look at speed of response, and we look at just overall activity and other things, and obviously similarity between you and that person. Um,
Right.
and then the third criteria is going to be availability, because that's another thing that we found. A sense of disconnection often is exacerbates when you reach out to someone and that person doesn't answer. So we're going to try
Yes.
to find out whether we can, within seconds, connect you with someone who's helpful, who's been in your shoes, and is available to chat within seconds.
I think
And that's
that's
what
that's wonderful. That's very, very cool. Boaz, tell me a little bit. So, Wisdo is a mobile application. I know that it won numerous awards, both from Apple and Google. It was featured on the New York Times and all the major publications. And I think that the mission of what you're doing is particularly important. And I'm watching, both my generation and the generations after me progress into a world that with a hyper connectivity. At the same time, it's I wouldn't say shallow, but it's just much more difficult to form these meaningful connections,
Mhm.
given that that it's one big playing field where it's conflicting. But you're both friends, but you're also frenemies, right?
Mhm.
Online, and it's very difficult. So one of the things that I noticed on the platform is that you tag people as helpful, mentor, mentee, but in my mind, everybody is sort of the same, right? I am a mentor to some people, I'm helpful to some, but I need help on a lot of things myself, and I need to be a mentee but from other people. So how does the whole ecosystem work in your mind?
Yeah. So the journey is often people come to Wisdo because they're looking for mentorship and support and inspiration
Naturally.
and all these things. But
Right.
then as they find that, we show them other people that they can help and support and inspire based on
Wonderful.
their own life. And about a quarter of people who come to Wisdo to find support. And inspiration, step up and become helpers, and then start their journey towards becoming a guide and a coach and all those things. Um, One thing that we did crack in the onboard, which was one of our turning points for us, was as you join Wisto, we ask you sort of what's in your mind, what are you going through. So say
Right.
it was anxiety or heartbreak or falling in love or college or any one of these things. But then instead of dropping you into a group with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, we show you a list of events or moments along that journey that other people have experienced. And then people go, been there, been there, been there, been there. Um, and then the other click is there now, there now, there now, there now. And what we found out, and to your question, is when you click a been there, we show you how many people you can help when
Wow.
in Wisdom because you've learned something
Wow.
in that
Amazing.
moment. And when you click there now, we show you how many people can help you.
I
So
love that.
thank you. So immediately you get a sense that yes, I'm here to find support, but also I do have stuff to share with other folks.
And I'm guessing it's somewhere along the same line of, if I'm able to, if I teach somebody something, I learn it myself much better. I'm sort of forced to learn, and I'm guessing that somebody, if I feel that I need help in some domain, even just by helping somebody else on another domain, just that boost of confidence and that interactivity already gives me the boost that will help me also go through my own journey. And I'm guessing that
Absolutely.
it's like this beautiful cycle that is just never ending, because every year your sort of two-sided marketplace is sort of, they're both one side, that they just keep rotating positions, right?
Exactly, and we're gonna recommend things that we think you maybe know less about after you've done something. So, for example, you might have come into Wisdo through the college experience. We're going to say, hey, you might want to take a look at anxiety. So, because we know that 50% of people who join the college-related communities end up joining the anxiety communities. So the fact that we know in the back end kind of what leads into what,
Yep.
kind of mapping out life to some extent, helps
Right.
us identify where we think the areas where we think you can find support from some people, and then the areas where maybe you can offer some support to other people.
Right. What is the tension between, or the fine line between, this non-clinical, non-clinical environment versus, therapy? A lot of these keywords that you've mentioned, they sound to me like something that you would go to a therapist to see. And I'm guessing that here in this marketplace, it's not therapists, it's people just like you that have gone through your experience, and are they able to help you through because they've experienced it themselves.
Yep. No, so it's not therapy. It's the metaphor that we always use is like imagine you're sitting on a train, and someone comes in, you don't know anything about them, but somehow they get a phone or something. Somehow you find out that both of you have either become a dad recently, or started a company, or lost a dad, or had surgery, or fell in love, or any one of these things, you're going to be talking for the next 2 hours, even though you don't know that person at all. Just because there's a lot of wisdom to share, and I don't think that any one of us in that situation would expect that person to offer clinical advice, unless that person happens to be a psychologist. So
Right.
we answer to that part of life. We just do it digitally and fairly effectively. What we've begun to do lately is use the fact that we know how to map out, these journeys to identify moments where people might be looking for professional advice, and then we showcase them on the platform as people who can offer either some coaching sessions, if they're a certified life coach, or a therapy session if they're a licensed therapist. But that is very clearly identified as that type of session versus peer support.
100%. I think that I think that what you're doing is just it's so interesting, and I am fascinated by where this world is going, and I'm mainly excited by the fact that there are people like you that are dealing with it to some degree. I think that unfortunately, still, 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs aren't dealing with these things. Perhaps they're just not as sexy as the hyper growth markets that are going. But I think that what you're doing is tremendously more important, and I think that we all need to take a check on what technologies do we need to be building so that we can have a safe relationship with our devices and with our world. So thank you, Boaz, for doing that, and for the inspiration that I'm getting from this. Before we're leaving, I want to thank you for being also generous with your time and ask you the most important question, which is 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Oh, you mean in addition to Israeli? No.
Of course.
So let's say I think hardworking, um, honest, and um, and it's too many words, but I miss my dad. I think that is kind of goes back to the genesis of Wisdo, but we can talk about that in a different time.
I love that. Boaz, thank you very, very much.
Michael,
Stay safe, stay healthy, and I can't wait to, first of all, join Wisdo myself, both as a helper and as a helpee. And I look forward to keeping in touch over there. Thank you very much.
likewise. All the best.
Take care.
Bye-bye.